When I was 19 years old, something really upsetting happened. My mom cheated on my dad with one of his close friends. This friend was about the same age as my dad, which made the whole thing even more painful. This betrayal was really tough on my dad. He was heartbroken because it was a double blow. His wife and his good buddy betrayed him. It hit him really hard, and he ended up struggling with depression and trust issues for a long time after that. My dad was so hurt that he stopped hanging out with his friends altogether and kind of shut himself off from everyone. During that tough time, I stayed close to my dad and helped him get through it. We got some professional help, and thankfully, with therapy, he started to get better and is doing okay now. But because of everything that happened, the last time I talked to my mom, I told her she was done with me, that I didn't want anything to do with her anymore. So, it's been about 8 years since I've spoken to her. Now, to make things even more complicated, my mom ended up marrying my dad's friend, the same one she had the affair with. And believe it or not, she even sent me an invitation to their wedding, which I thought was pretty bold and hurtful given everything that had happened. Recently, after all these years, my mom has reached out to me again. I haven't decided what to do about it yet. It's a lot to think about, especially after how things went down and how they affected my dad and me. Ever since the whole mess with my mom cheating on my dad, which really turned our lives upside down, I haven't wanted to talk to her. It was a really rough time for me and my dad, and honestly, just thinking about those days brings back a lot of bad memories. Because of all that, I decided a while back to block her number and even block her on Facebook, and I did the same with her husband too. One day, out of the blue, I got a letter from her in the mail. My first thought was to just rip it up and toss it in the trash. Why even bother, right? But something made me stop and decide to actually open it and see what she had written. In her letter, my mom said she really misses being part of my life and feels super sorry for all the pain she caused my dad and me. She wrote that over the years, she's tried a few times to talk to me about everything that happened, to explain things or apologize, but she couldn't reach me because, well, I had her blocked. Now she was asking if I could come over to her house to talk, just the two of us. She made it clear that her husband wouldn't be there. It would just be me and her. She seemed like she really wanted to make amends or at least explain her side of the story. I'm stuck feeling a bit confused about what to do next. On one hand, it's been so long, and she did put us through so much pain. But on the other hand, maybe there's a part of the story I don't know, or maybe, just maybe, there's a chance to clear the air. It's a lot to think about, especially considering how complicated and hurtful the past was. I'm really stuck on what to do next, and part of me just wants to keep being stubborn, like I have been for the last 8 years, where I've pretty much acted like my mom doesn't exist. I also want to point out that through all this, my dad has never said a bad word about her. Even though he was deeply hurt, he never tried to make me see her in a bad light. Instead, he became depressed, lost his trust in friends, and generally stopped trusting people around him. The affair wasn't just a brief slip. It lasted for years, right under my dad's nose, with both my mom and his friend deceiving him. After some intense therapy, my dad began to heal and open up, but I chose a different path. I cut my mom out of my life completely as my way to cope and move on. Now, though, she's reached out wanting to talk, and I'm considering meeting her because we never really had a conversation about everything that happened. I never gave her a chance to explain herself, and part of me is honestly just curious to hear what she has to say. It's weird. I'm just tossing these thoughts around, unable to decide. Part of me wants to maintain the distance, to keep guarding myself against more pain, but another part is wondering if there's something important she needs to say, something that might change how I feel. It's a tough call, and I'm just not sure what to do. Now for some comments before the update. It's a tough situation to be in. I'm sorry for what you and your dad went through. If I were you, I would think hard about it before making any decisions. I would try to figure out what are the pros and cons of this potential meeting with your mother. Maybe now she's realized what she's done, but that doesn't mean you have to forgive her. The ball is in New York court. If you want to meet and talk with her, go ahead. But if you don't, that's fine as well. You don't owe her anything. She may have been your mother, but after what you put you through, it's understandable. This is the best comment. You don't have to forgive your mother, and you do need to do what's best for you. But it is unhealthy to hold on to hate. Letting go of hate doesn't mean you have to forgive them and open your heart and trust them. But at the end of the day, you have to make that choice. I'm sorry you're even in this position. Take your time with the decision. Don't feel rushed when we are another. If your mom is wanting to reconnect, she can continue to wait patiently until you feel clarity. Given she's remarried and still with a fair partner, it's unlikely you could develop much or any connection with her alone. It's logical to assume she would want to incorporate a fair partner as well eventually, So if you want to meet and potentially reconnect, you might want to establish firm boundaries there indefinitely so you can remove them as you see comfortable moving forward. It might also be a good idea to have a mature conversation with dad before you reach your own decision. So he's fully informed, and then everything is out in the open, whatever you decide. If by any chance you decide to meet her, do not go to her home. Do it on your terms, a place and time. You feel more comfortable, and walk out if needed. I think the last place to have this talk would be at the house she shares with the man she cheated with. It can trigger some anger in you. This is hard. She has caused you and your father so much pain, and that's not an easy thing to deal with. With this whole situation, I feel like you've closed the door, but the problem is still on your doorstep, so to speak. I think talking to your mother would be good for you. You mentioned that your dad went through therapy, but did you do any for yourself? What did you do to help yourself? Speaking to your mother might give you some closure. I'm not saying you'll be hugging and singing happy songs by the end of it, but I think you may be able to successfully close that chapter of your life afterwards. Right now, you're just ignoring your mother while resentment stays rooted within you. And that's not healthy. Ultimately, the decision is yours. Do it because you want to and on your terms. I wish you the best. I'm a pessimistic person. My guess is your absence in her life is continued reminders that she destroyed more than her marriage. In my mind, she'll say or do anything to get back into your life. Overwrought apologies, heartfelt regrets, being sorry she missed out on so much of your life, wanted to talk to you so many times so you could forgive her and that she could rest easier. It's not your responsibility to make her feel better for her actions. You owe no forgiveness just because someone has regrets that their actions had consequences. To be honest, I'd consider talking to a therapist to work through what your mother did to you so you can heal. I don't see healing coming from your mother. I see perpetuation of her bullcrap. I have experience with this. My dad cheated on my mom in 2001 when I was 23 years old. After 30 years of them being with each other, we were so close before this happened. I did not speak to him for the following 2 years. He reached out to me in early 2004 to tell me that he had cancer and would really like to talk to me again. I agreed and went to visit him in the state that he moved to. He died in August 2004, 7 months from when we reconciled. I'm happy that I put my anger on the back burner and did the difficult thing. I loved him and now see how flawed of a person he was. I never totally forgave him in my head or my heart, but I do know the level of grief I would still have had if he died without us ever discussing everything. Final update. Hey everyone, I really didn't think my post would get so much attention. I just wanted to share an update because, based on a lot of advice from you guys here, I decided to meet up with my mom. We agreed to meet in a public place because I thought it would be more comfortable, and luckily it was a nice day out. So we ended up going for a walk in the park just to talk things over. She gave me a heads up beforehand that her husband would be picking her up afterward, and I was cool with that. It didn't really bother me. When we met, one of the first things I noticed was that she wasn't making any excuses for what had happened. She just kept apologizing, again and again. I told her straight up that I almost didn't come to meet her. I made it clear that I wasn't there for her sake, but for my own. I needed to do this for me, to find some closure or understanding maybe. She seemed to get that. We found a bench and sat down just to keep talking. One big question I had was whether my dad had done anything wrong or if he had been abusive in any way, which might have led to what happened. But she was very clear in her answer. No, he hadn't. She admitted that she simply developed feelings for someone else and acknowledged that it wasn't an excuse for the years of deceit. It was a lot to process, and even though it was tough, I felt a bit lighter for having the conversation. I'm still sorting through my feelings about it all, but I'm glad I went. It was important for me to hear her side, even if it doesn't change the past. During our conversation in the park, I found myself confronting some deep feelings and memories. While my mom continued to express her apologies, I opened up about my own experiences and realizations from those difficult years. I remember telling her, "You lied to us. You lied to me too, not just to Dad." Reflecting on my teenage years, I've started to remember all these little moments that didn't seem important at the time but now feel so obvious. Like those times her ex-friend, now her husband, was over at our house when Dad was away. I look back and see how friendly you two were with each other, and I feel so foolish for not connecting the dots earlier. All these small memories that I never thought much about at the time suddenly make a lot of sense. I also shared with her how those years have shaped the way I think about that period of my life now, and I told her about the enormous pain Dad went through. He never spoke ill of her or her husband despite everything. But he struggled deeply with depression, to the point where I was genuinely scared I might find him gone one day, taken by his own hand. The betrayal by two of the closest people in his life, his wife and his best friend, had pushed him to the edge. In confronting these painful truths with my mom, I explained why I had made the decision to cut off all contact with her. It was what I felt was right, a necessary step for me to protect my own well-being and support my dad. I needed her to understand the impact of her actions, not just on him, but on me too. It was a hard conversation, but it was essential for me to express these things that had been weighing on me for so long. I made it very clear to her during our talk that my decision to cut ties was my own. I wasn't influenced by Dad. It was something I felt I needed to do for my own peace of mind. Given all that, one big question hung in the air. Why was she reaching out now after all these years? What did she want from me at this point? Her answer was simple but loaded with implications. She wanted to be part of my life again. I couldn't help but respond sharply. You should have thought about that while you were lying through your teeth for 5 years. It was hard for me to reconcile the warm memories I had of her and Dad's friend, who was almost like an uncle to me, with the betrayal they orchestrated right under our noses. We had even gone fishing together, him acting like Dad's buddy, all while entangled in lies and deception. I asked her, almost rhetorically, how could you manage it for so many years? She didn't have an answer to that. Much of our conversation was me expressing my feelings of betrayal and disappointment, although I made sure to let her speak her piece too. By the end of our talk, I told her firmly, I'm doing fine without you. I just wanted to meet you because I wanted closure, and I've gotten it now. She tried to assert that she was truly sorry, not just for getting caught, but for everything that had happened. She even said she'd do anything to at least have some form of contact with me. But at that moment, I laid down the only condition that might ever change my mind. The only thing that would ever make me consider having any contact is for you to make a choice. I left it at that, not fully elaborating, but making it clear that some significant gesture of goodwill or change on her part would be necessary for me ever to consider reopening our relationship. After hearing her out and saying everything that was on my mind, I finally laid out the ultimatum that had been building up for years. You already made your choice. Either divorce him or stay with him and go no contact with me. But I'm not going to force you to make that choice because you already made it. I wanted her to understand the weight of her decisions, not just on her life, but on mine too. I then told her, I feel I got what I came for, which was some closure, and you wanted to speak your piece. Now you have. And I still don't feel I want to have any contact with you. Just leave me alone. You made your choice. I needed her to know that while I wasn't angry, I also couldn't just go back to how things were. The damage was too deep and too much had changed. However, as I spoke those words, I could feel that I was being harsher and colder than usual. Anyone who knows me would say that acting this way is out of character for me. I saw that she was in tears by the end of our conversation. Despite everything, seeing her like that wasn't easy. I simply told her, live your life. It was a tough, emotional moment, one where I had to stand firm on my boundaries while also confronting the complicated feelings that come with family and betrayal. While I sought closure, I also had to manage the mix of relief and sadness that came with finally saying everything that needed to be said. I ended our conversation with a definitive line, and I will live mine, but I don't want you to be a part of mine. It was clear and final. There was no handshake, no hug, just a walk away from the situation, from her. And honestly, I feel like I made the right call. Throughout the entire meeting, I stayed calm. There was no yelling, no name-calling. Keeping my composure was important to me, even though it was incredibly tough. Seeing my mom in tears was hard. It's not something I take lightly or am proud of causing. But it was essential for her to understand the full impact of her actions, not just in the past, but on our future relationship as well. I needed her to know clearly why I chose to cut contact, and to ensure she understood that this wasn't just a spontaneous decision, but one I had considered deeply for a long time. Despite the emotional difficulty of the moment, I feel lighter and ready to move on. Some might have expected a full meltdown if I ever confronted her, but the reality was calm. There were no dramatics. I had been preparing for this conversation for years in my head, rehearsing what I might say, how I might react. Now she knows where I stand. Edit. I just wanted to clarify something important. My mom isn't blocked on Facebook or on my phone anymore. If she has anything else she wants to say, I'm open to listening. During our conversation, I did throw a lot at her, and it was pretty intense. Who knows, maybe one day I might feel okay about having some form of contact with her again. But for now, I don't feel ready for that. I need some time to process everything and see how I feel as time goes on. Story 2. I punched my husband in the face, and I'm having a hard time taking all the blame. We were in a massive argument, like one of those where everyone's voice gets louder and the air feels tense. Suddenly, he stepped way too close to me, invading my personal space, and he used the upper part of his body to shove me. This caught me off guard, and I nearly lost my balance and fell over. I was really shaken up, so I told him, "Back off and stop it." But instead of listening, he just did it again. Now I wasn't just standing there not knowing what was happening. I was fully aware, but I was also filled with fear and anger because of how aggressive he was being. In that moment, something inside me clicked, and I reacted by punching him. It's not something I ever imagined I'd do. It's totally out of character for me. But there's more to this story. I should mention that in the past, I've been through some really tough times where I was seriously hurt by someone else. And this wasn't the first time he acted this way toward me, so now I'm stuck trying to figure out what to do next. This is a whole new situation for me, and honestly, it's overwhelming to think about all of this. After everything calmed down a bit, he was getting ready to leave, and he put all the blame on me. He couldn't believe I had punched him, and he said it was going to take a really long time for him to forgive me. When I tried to explain why I reacted the way I did, hoping he'd understand, he just wouldn't accept my explanation. According to him, what I did was far worse than anything he did, which just made everything feel even more complicated. Now I'm left trying to sort through all these feelings and figure out our next steps. It's a lot for anyone to handle, especially when you're still trying to make sense of your emotions and reactions in such a charged moment. I'm really struggling with everything that's happened, and it feels incredibly tough and complex. I understand that violence isn't the right response, and I acknowledge that, but I also think the things leading up to my reaction are significant. It's not okay for someone to invade my personal space, shove me, or call me names. These actions make me feel threatened and can trigger a defensive reaction, especially with my past abuse experiences. I'm frustrated because I'm being treated like I'm the abuser when I felt I was responding to being threatened. It's difficult because it's not just about who did what first. It's about a pattern of behavior that has made me feel unsafe. The dynamic between us is complicated, with my past trauma and our current issues intersecting. He has gotten in my face before, pushed me, and made me feel physically at risk. My reaction, while regrettable, came from a place of feeling cornered and needing to defend myself. This doesn't make my punch okay, but it does explain some of the reasons behind it. I think it might help to talk about these incidents with someone neutral, like a counselor or therapist. They could help me find safer ways to handle confrontations and work through my trauma responses, like the blackouts and flashbacks from my PTSD. As for whether I'm completely wrong, I don't think it's about being right or wrong in a situation as nuanced as this. It's more about understanding my triggers, how I respond, and how to manage them better in the future. I also need to think about why I'm staying in this relationship and whether it's good for my mental health and safety, considering my history. Reflecting on this could help me figure out what's healthiest for me moving forward. In the past, when things got really bad between us, he would take the blame. But not this time. I've never been the one to make the first move to hit, especially not in the face. This time, though, the mix of anger and hurt from being treated so poorly by someone I love, coupled with the fear and panic I felt, made me snap. I didn't hit him as hard as I could have. Not that it makes it okay, but I want to point out that it wasn't a punch thrown in pure anger. It was more out of panic, a sloppy reaction in a moment of fear. I've tried talking to him about this, explaining how I felt and what led up to that moment, but right now, I'm being painted as the villain. It's hard to tell if he's just playing games with my mind. I understand why I reacted the way I did, even though he was being aggressive too. But maybe he's right? I'm really trying to work out if I'm completely in the wrong here. They keep telling me I am, and it's weighing heavily on me. I'm searching for some clarity, trying to understand if my actions were totally unjustified or if there's some understanding to be found in the chaos of our conflict. Story 3. Grandmother gave my brother and me an equal share portfolio each when we were kids. Brother sold his when they were worth a car. I left mine in, and now they're a substantial amount. Brother and his girlfriend want my half now. When my brother was 16 and I was 4, my grandmother set aside a share portfolio for us. As soon as we were old enough, it was transferred into our own accounts, and it was only 4 years later that my brother dipped heavily into his and bought a new Honda. I knew about mine for much longer than he did before it became mine, and watched it grow since I understood what it was. By the time I was given full control, it was already worth a ridiculous amount because a big portion of it was invested in Apple, and I'm torn on using the funds locked up as they are because Dad drilled it into me to leave it to grow until I'm 40-something. I don't talk much with my brother. He's done some stupid things to the family over the years, and I didn't really grow up with him, so all I usually hear about his life comes through Dad. His new girlfriend works in law, though, and I've received a formal letter from them both that the investments my grandmother made were designed to be for both of us to use, not just for me alone, and his was only around $15,000. The number is right, but mine was only worth that at the time he spent it too. They want half of the value of mine now, and his girlfriend has informed me if I don't give them access, then the legal fees and fines would eat up my half and I'd be left with nothing. The dividends alone support a huge part of my life, and they've saved me a few times. If half of that disappeared, it'd set me back years. I know it sounds selfish, but I'm really used to having the extra income back me up when I've wanted to move. I've lived in 4 states by my own choice, and I want to move and take in more before I settle down, if I ever do. How likely is it they'll win and leave me with nothing? As far as I know, there was no paperwork or will, just my grandmother's word. She set up my brother's accounts when he turned 19, but she gave them to Dad at the same time as my brother got his, and Dad transferred the whole lot to me 6 years ago. For my share, I have all the logins. The trading accounts and bank accounts are in my name, and the shares are all solely in my name too. Should I find my own lawyer, and if I need one, what kind do I need? I have an accountant I've used for years, but this doesn't seem like an accounts problem, but a law one. Update. Mostly good news. I worked with my dad and got my own lawyer. I got the timeline of my shares wrong, but it comes out the same. What my brother and I inherited from my grandmother was originally part of my grandfather's portfolio. He was the money-savvy one. My grandmother looked after those after he died, and she personally set up my brother's accounts and gave him control of his part. She didn't do the same with mine before she died. I thought she had already set the accounts up for me and given control to Dad before passing. Instead, the shares were in her will, and she left everything she owned to my dad with instruction that what was $15,000 worth when my brother got his equivalent part would go to me when I was old enough to know how to take care of them. There was no trust. She just trusted my dad. My dad did the right thing and set up accounts for me and gave me control 6 years ago. My dad put some of his own shares in too as an extra leg up. Dad admitted to me he'd chewed out my brother last year when he came to him asking for money, and Dad had supported him several times over the years and got to the point he'd had enough. My brother found out I still had my investments because Dad had used me as an example of how brothers should have been using money. That's how my brother found out I still had shares and they'd grown. According to all that info, my lawyer tells me I'm in the clear, but it's not going to get to the point of finding that out in court, as my brother's GF was only a legal secretary. I say was because the firm she worked for apologized and informed my lawyer she was terminated immediately. The letter I received from them had been edited to put her name in a position higher up than it should have been, and some of the contact information had been changed. A week after she was fired, my brother visited me begging for money. His girlfriend is in serious debt, and she took a chance on scamming cash from me and lost. I felt awful rejecting my own brother over and over, and if he hadn't involved his girlfriend needing an amount well into 5 figures, I might have given him some. The next morning, I found all my tires had been slashed. Screw him. I don't feel bad anymore. The rest of the comments in the previous thread made me realize I don't know nearly enough about what I'm doing with the shares and dividends and money in general. A lot of the decisions I've made have been with Dad's help, and his advice has paid off well so far, but not because I knew it would, but because I had no idea what I was doing and left it up to him. I've booked in to work with a financial advisor to make the most of what I have. Thanks for all your comments.